Hi there, Izzy from Digital Goja Showrooms, and today we're going to take a look at the 15 most asked questions on how to work with the Altura Photo ETTL flash for Canon and the Altura Photo wireless trigger set. I scoured the internets, I looked on Amazon, eBay, some of the blogospheres, customer service questions, customer service emails, and I put together a combination of the most asked questions that people have about working with these products. So if this video is helpful to you, remember to click the like button underneath and subscribe to our channel for future tutorials and also other sessions. Any comments or questions, remember to put them underneath. And without further ado, let's take a look at these questions that are being asked. How do I activate the backlight feature on the LCD for my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Very simple. After your strobe is activated, all you need to do is lightly press the on-off button, and that brings up the backlight cue. You can turn it on or off at will. So if you're in a dark environment, it's great to be able to kick it on, and then you can turn it off again. How do I engage the white bounce card on my new Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Very simply, you're going to gently pull here, and that means you're bringing out the reflector and also the wide angle diffuser. Now, if you're just going to use a reflector, you can gently, by holding this, push back the diffuser, and now use your Altura Photo in the bounce position. So this way, the light is bounced straight up and across to give you a nice diffused shot, especially for portraits. When you're doing close-up shots, this gives you incredibly nice soft lighting so you don't have harsh shadows and excessive contrast. Now, of course, when you're done with it, you want to make sure that you gently push this back in. You don't want to bend it much because you don't want to run the risk of bending it or creasing it so that it doesn't store properly. So gently push it back in, and voila, it's safely stored, ready for your next photo session. How do I swivel the bounce head on my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Very simply, grasp it on the edges, and this way you can go to 90 degrees or a full 180 degrees. Why do you have this capability? Very important. A lot of times we might be working where the subject is much closer and we want to actually bounce the light from behind a bounce source behind us, whether we have a reflector back here or a wall or a pillar. But also you have the capability of working with side walls and again changing the accent of your light depending on where the light source is coming from on the strobe. So it's a very beneficial feature, and also when we're working in a situation where it's on wireless, you always want to have, of course, the head having the capability of being aimed at your subject while the sensor is being aimed at your primary flash so it picks up the signal. How do I activate my wide diffuser on my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Very simple. You're going to gently pull underneath, and this brings out your wide panel diffuser and your bounce card. Now gently push the bounce card back because that's only when you're going to be shooting at a straight bounce feature, but now I'm shooting straight on, and this now gives me the wider diffusion for working with a situation where I now have a wider perspective for group shots, or if I'm working with close-up portraits, it diffuses the light much more. Does my Altura ETTL flash strobe for Canon come with an accessory diffuser? Yes, it does. It happens to live underneath here in this compartment of your carrying pouch. So you unzip here, and there it is. Also, you have the added benefit of being able to store extra AA batteries. Very beneficial, especially for high-powered strobes. Pull it out, and it's very simple to attach on. Notice that on the top here you have a sort of a little bump, and this little bump is going to line up with the protrusion on the top of the strobe here. Gently line it up and push it in. You don't have to push this excessively. This is just enough so that now it's lined up and it's ready for being able to give you really nice, soft, diffuse light. This is great for portraiture and for group shots where it gives you nice, soft lighting and doesn't give you harsh contrast or shadows. So all in all, very nice feature. Do I have the capability of, on TTL mode, changing the exposure compensation on my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Yes, we do. First, let's activate the LCD to light it up. And notice where now if I use this button, I can cut it down to as much as 3 exposure compensation levels. And I can go to negative, and I can also go to positive. So you have all the way up to 3 exposure values, so that even though the unit is working on TTL with my Canon Rebel, I still have the control of being able to tweak it and give it as much power or as least power as I choose to. What are the different modes in my Altura Photo ETTL flash for Canon? Well, let's turn it on first of all. Now, you're going to hear a little bit of a grinding noise. That's just the flash activating. This is not going to affect your imaging whatsoever. And then as you press the mode button, first let's get the background to light up. Your LCD lights up by just barely touching the on-off button. That activates the light. And then you can switch between modes by pressing the mode button. The first one that shows up, which is the most popular, is TTL. That means through the lens metering, so your flash is going to use the metering system in your camera to give you the correct exposure. Again, the most popular. And in that mode, you can even work in the full auto, and it will function properly because now the camera and the flash become one, and it works automatically for it. And you can even work this on the full auto mode, which is the green AI mode. And on this mode, again, the camera and the flash are one, so it knows how much output to do, and it'll synchronize automatically for you. Now your next mode is your manual mode, and this is the one where you, if you're a photo enthusiast, can be a little bit more creative and you can change the output of the strobe. And in this mode, now the strobe is the one that's coming up with the amount of power. It's not using the metering system in your camera. So this is a little bit more for the advanced enthusiasts. Maybe some of you starters out there might not want to go into this mode immediately right away. Your next mode is your repeat mode. This is the mode that you can choose how many times your strobe will fire per second and also at the power ratio. So it's great if you're doing continuous shooting. This is a very popular one for the photographers that are doing fast action shooting with their strobe. And of course, the next mode, when we go here, we now go to the S1 mode. And this is their wireless mode, so you can use the flash wirelessly. Very simple to work with. Place the flash onto the appropriate stand that comes with it. Lock it in place. Again, this doesn't have to be super tight, but it has to be tight enough so that it holds it in place. And remember, this is line of sight. So now you have to make sure that this, which is your sensor, is aimed at your camera. That's the way that it's going to guarantee that it reads the light source. Now in this mode, you should not be working on the full automatic. You should be working on either aperture value, time value, manual, or program. I prefer manual. I'm old school. This way I can set my shutter speed, which for most flashes, it works better at 1/125th of a second. And here's where you pop up the flash. And now, again, this has to be aimed at the direction of the strobe, so when your primary flash fires off, now your Altura flash works as a backup or even as a main light source, but you want to guarantee that the head is aimed at the subject matter. This sensor always has to be facing your primary strobe, whether it's the built-in strobe or another strobe that you have on your camera. Now, the next mode is the S2 mode, which is for TTL. This means if you have your primary strobe set to TTL, it's going to read the light off of here better, and this flash is now going to ignore the pre-flashes that the TTL ones do. So that way it fires correctly and it doesn't pre-fire. And when you press mode again, you're back to the beginning, back to TTL. And remember, light source, especially if you're working in a dark environment, kicked on that little on-off switch a little bit, and that lights up your backlighting for your LCD. If my Altura Photo ETTL strobe is giving me a hard time, I have it set at different functions that I don't know what I'm doing, it's driving me crazy, I don't know how to get out of it. Well, the best way to fix that is to do a manual reset, and it's very simple to do. While your strobe is in the off position, all you need to do is hold the set button and the on-off button at the same time. So when you do that, notice what happens. The screen lights up with a bunch of different icons and different symbols, and then boom, it goes back to the standard default, which is for TTL. So now you're ready to use it as if it was just taken right out of the box. It's back to factory reset defaults. Does my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon come with a wireless stand adapter? Yes, it does. I have found that some consumers have never checked right behind here. I'll show you. Here's where your flash comes. So it's stored properly in here. Remove it. And right behind here, there it is. This is where it lives. Take it out and notice that you have the capability of now putting the flash on here just as if that was your hot shoe on your camera. And notice that even on the bottom, you also have for a tripod or a light stand adapter if you choose to. But right now, you can work with it this way and it holds it nice and secure, ready for some wireless photography. Can I shoot on continuous mode with my new Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Yes, you can. Absolutely, but you have to make sure you have it set to the proper setting. You have to go to the strobe effect, which is the multiple lines. That's telling you that the flash is going to fire multiple strobe shots. And you want to be able to change your mode depending on how many shots you want per second. And you can also change the output. So now that my Rebel is set to continuous shooting and I have it set to 1/64th power, it's going to shoot 3 flashes per second every single time. So if you're doing fast action shooting, this is great because it will constantly keep up with your motor drive and you'll be able to fire constantly to be able to stop action and create special strobe effects. Does my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon give me the f-stop readout on the LCD? Yes, it does. Right now we have it on TTL. Let me activate the backlight and notice how when I change the f-stop on my Rebel, it does show it back here right on the LCD. So I can go anywhere from the maximum aperture, which on this lens happens to be 3.5, and all the way down to f22, so that it actually tells me, instead of me having to keep an eye out on the LCD down here in the viewfinder, I know exactly what the aperture that I have my camera set to right here. So that way I know what kind of an exposure I'm going to be getting at all times. What kind of batteries does my new Altura Photo ETTL flash for Canon work with? Well, they made it nice and simple. It's the standard AA batteries. You work with 4 of them. I highly recommend working with the higher milliamp batteries, so get some disposable good batteries that are higher milliamp, or also nickel metal hydrides that are rechargeables. But the important thing is you want to get batteries that have a really good amount of power, because remember, our strobes use a lot of energy. And you're going to notice that on the top screen right here on the top battery compartment shows your layout. So you're going to place them in there correctly, because if you do this incorrectly, number one, you run the gamut of not being able to close this properly, and two, shorting out your flash. And of course, to be able to mount it on the camera, you need to make sure that your strobe is on the off position, and when you go to put it onto the camera, you slide it straight on. Do not wiggle it side to side. Slide it straight on, and then you can activate your strobe and turn on your camera to work with it. Does the zoom range change automatically as I zoom my lens on the Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Yes, it does. Notice how when I zoom, you will see the actual millimeters change on your screen. And again, this is meant to work from a wide angle 24 millimeter all the way to 105. So this way you don't have to worry about having to zoom manually. It does it as soon as you actually change the zoom perspective on your Rebel camera. Can I manually zoom on my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Yes, you can. Very simple. First, you want to hold down the zoom button till it blinks. Notice how the millimeters are blinking. And now you can use this button, which zooms out, or the right button, which allows you to zoom in. So this way, you can make the decision of how much of the magnification you want the flash head to do by zooming back and forth. And once you shoot, it keeps that setting. And again, to reset it, hit zoom again and zoom back or forth until you get the acquired millimeter that you prefer, and then fire away. Very simple. What does the pilot button do on my Altura Photo ETTL strobe for Canon? Well, this is the button that the manufacturer placed so you can try out the flash, make sure it's firing. Notice how when I press it, it fires off. And this button does work in all modes, whether you're on TTL or strobe or full manual. This is to make sure that your flash is functioning properly. You always have the pilot button to test out so that you can guarantee that your strobe is firing.